It's my nerd world, and welcome to it. I'm your host, Jon Justice, for another Star Wars podcast. Got a really fun show this week. Once again, this was another one of those situations where I went into the weekend not quite sure what I was going to talk about, and then ended up with more than a show's worth of content to cover. So, on the show this week, there have been some new LEGO leaks we'll talk a bit about on Reddit. Not a lot there, but we'll give you some details. Also, Bespin Bulletin has an exclusive on Instagram. They've put out some information about some of the vehicle variants we'll be seeing in The Rise of Skywalker, and if you've been listening to this show at all, you know what a fan I am of the vehicles. We'll also get into why I believe that Star Wars will always endure. This is based off an article that was written on Nerdist that I will share with you. I also did some digging into some older articles, one specifically after The Last Jedi came out, that I think is a really, really good take well before we had any information about the Rise of Skywalker. So we'll dive into that, and we'll get into listener feedback. We're also going to address a criticism that I've heard when it comes to the marketing being done of Star Wars by Disney on several podcasts this week. I don't know if the podcasts were listening to each other. I don't know if this is all stemming from an instinctive reaction that many people had over the MCU reveals during the Hall H panel at San Diego Comic-Con compared to what we've received so far with Disney. But we're going to talk a bit about this perception versus the reality and whether or not Disney is handling the promotion of Star Wars wrong. I think to a certain extent that they are, and I've discussed this before, but we'll dive into that before we get into listener feedback. I also have some really legitimate, exciting news for fans of my science fiction novel, EMBARK, that I will be sharing with you at the end of the show. This week's My Nerd World, the Star Wars podcast, is brought to you by the Blaster app. It is free right now in your app store for your iPhone. TheBlasterApp.com is the website, or just search for Blaster app in your app store. This is the perfect app for Star Wars content creators, podcasters, and also those that listen to podcasts. And for you content creators, I'm talking to Girls with Sabers, I'm talking to Knights of Vader, ATT Chat, I'm talking to Doing Talking. All you guys, get on the Blaster app and start putting up your audio posts. You can post your audio comments just like you would a tweet. It is free. I know they've been doing some fixes to the app, and right now it's been functioning. I'm putting up blasts almost every single day. So download the app in the App Store, follow me, Jon, Jon Justice, or My Nerd World, and let's get these conversations rolling. You can share them within the Blaster app itself, the audio comments that you have on any subject, especially Girls with Sabers. I know that they are really excited about the Lord of the Rings TV show coming up. You guys can go and talk about that on the Blaster app. You can also share it on Twitter and Facebook as well. So go to the App Store and download the Blaster app. All right, let's not waste any more time, and let's get into this week's My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight. Be with you. No one's ever really gone.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you. Just let it in.
I can't tell you how I found this particular article. And I'm going to start here because it's in the intro. Welcome to the show this week. I'm so glad you're here. I love talking about Star Wars. But I found this article going back to 2017. This was prior, obviously, quite a bit prior, to the release of The Last Jedi. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy tells MTV News that The Last Jedi will address the mystery of Rey's parentage. Star Wars The Force Awakens introduced us to a fearless new heroine named Rey in the next installment of the Star Wars saga, The Last Jedi. We'll get to know more about the Force-sensitive scavenger from Jakku as the film dives into her backstory. Of course, this means the Episode 8 actress will address the episode. This means that Episode 8 will address, holy cow, the most significant mystery surrounding her, the character, her parentage. It's integral. It's important. It's something that, interestingly enough, as we were sitting and coming up with The Force Awakens, it was one of the central questions we were asking ourselves. That's according to the Lucasfilm president, Kathleen Kennedy. She told this to MTV's Josh Horowitz at Star Wars Celebration. So it's not surprising that the audience is going to continue to ask that question. We have to answer it at some point. Kennedy wouldn't confirm if the answer the fans have been looking for comes in The Last Jedi or not. She did say that the anticipated middle chapter, like The Empire Strikes Back before it, will set up the conflict that will carry the characters to the end of the saga in Episode 9. There's no question that this is set up as a trilogy, and that 3-act structure of setup, conflict, and resolution very much is what we have planned, she said. But we do try hard to have these films stand on their own. Okay. As for whether the Star Wars franchise goes from there, and again, this is going back to 2017, whether it will be a continuation of the Skywalker saga, Kennedy says she and her team at Lucasfilm are asking the right questions right now. But given the success of Rogue One, Lucasfilm does have every intention of doing more anthology films. Fans can anticipate an announcement sometime this summer. Of course, we know how much things can change. All right, so why did I bring this up? Well, I brought this up not so much to really go down the path of the parental question as it relates to Rey and whether or not Kylo was or wasn't lying in The Last Jedi. And I know there's a lot of mixed and really strong feelings about that. I've read several listener feedback emails from individuals who are taking the stance that Kylo never lied to Rey. And I think you can have it both ways, and I even mentioned this during listener feedback, I believe, on last week's show, that in that moment in the throne room in The Last Jedi, maybe he wasn't lying to Rey about letting everything die, but he was shifting his motivation because he had this girl that could help him achieve his goals. Okay, so I don't necessarily want to go down that road. Those questions will be answered in The Rise of Skywalker, and perhaps when the next trailer drops or even the behind-the-scenes video that we may get at D23 in about a month from now, we'll have more to talk about when it comes to Rey's parentage and exactly what that could potentially mean in The Rise of Skywalker. There's, of course, a lot of theories out there. I brought it up because I want to talk about this idea that Star Wars will always endure. And this is going to be a running theme throughout the show, and quite honestly, it's a theme with almost every show. The fact that there are hundreds of Star Wars podcasts out there pumping out content every week, including myself, speaks to the power of the franchise, the power of story, and the power of myth. And I'll talk at length about this later in the show, but the overarching theme this week, and this certainly points to that, this 2017 article in Rey's parentage, is that as Star Wars fans, we love these mysteries. We love talking about these things. We love dissecting these things. And this is certainly going to be relevant when we get into the topic of marketing and is Disney doing it right or are they doing it wrong? I think a lot of that's going to be answered based off of, how long down the road we can go back and look at this particular time period and the success that The Rise of Skywalker will or won't have. But I'm of the opinion that all of these things that I'm talking about, and the fact that we do this show, and the fact that these articles get written about these smaller issues within the story themselves, point to the fact that Star Wars will always endure. It'll have its ups and downs. There will be mistakes made by the content creators and the studios that are running these films. Solo, you can go and look at. That was a misstep, right? Something that I believe could have been avoided, and a lot of people, I believe, also have the same feeling that could have been avoided. However, we are still clamoring for details and for information. If you spend any time on Reddit, you know that it doesn't matter what it is. It's Legos, for crying out loud, and we'll talk about them here in just a second. You get these Lego releases, and you get 55 comments based off of a Knights of Ren figure leak over characters that we have already seen pictures of. So everything that we talk about on the show points to that. So you might be wondering, or you might not be wondering, how did I land on this particular thing? Okay, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I'll tell you how this idea popped into my head as I was working on the details for the show this week. I was on Twitter, and this guy, Kurt Arthur, at Kurt Arthur 12, I'm going through the hashtag The Rise of Skywalker thread, and I'm just looking at people's posts, right? And I came across this one that was posted earlier this weekend, and I just had to laugh, and I was already going down the road of wanting to talk about how the reasons why Star Wars will always endure. And this was based off of this article from Nerdist that we'll talk about here in a moment, who's really wearing Kylo's mask in The Rise of Skywalker. And I love this talk of Kylo's mask, and I was glad to see Aaron Vale over at Nerdist pick up on something that I had picked up on in previous podcasts. So I'm going through Twitter, and I see this Kurt Arthur tweet. Let me read it to you. Okay, it made me laugh. You see, the reason fans aren't excited about Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is because, and I'm going to stop there. First off, the premise is wrong. You see, the reason fans aren't excited about Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, that's just not true. Right? I know they're generalities. This is why I love the Blaster app, by the way, because you can do audio instead of text, and so you can provide some context. Okay? Fans are excited about The Rise of Skywalker. I would even argue that the fans that didn't like The Last Jedi are also excited about The Rise of Skywalker. So to throw out a generality like that, it from the onset, the premise of your tweet and your comment is already starting off on a negative because it's just not true. Are some fans not excited about The Rise of Skywalker? Sure. Are some fans not excited about The Rise of Skywalker because of The Last Jedi? Sure. Are fans not excited about The Rise of Skywalker? Absolutely not. For crying out loud. We'll talk about this, but the podcasts that I've been listening to have been complaining that Disney's not doing enough, not giving us enough stuff. All right, let me get back into the rest of his tweet, which is equally as ridiculous. The reason they aren't excited is because Johnson left fans with nothing to talk about. He killed Snoke and Luke and told us about Rey without setting up anything that excited fans just wow. Okay. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. This is the perception of one person, probably a person who isn't paying very close attention to the things that you and I are all paying attention to, right? We know that's simply not true. The bulk of the conversation for the past almost 2 years has been The Last Jedi. How is that possible if Rian Johnson didn't do something to perpetuate the story and to push it forward? It's just not true. And the fact that I had this article from 2017, the fact that I had this article from Nerdist, the fact that I had these exclusives from Bespin, Bulletin, right, dismiss that outright. Are there some fans out there that feel that way? Absolutely. Is it true? Of course it's not. Of course it's not true. Ultimately, what I'm talking about is that same thing that I've discussed many, many times, and that is the good and the bad, right, of social networking and the ability that people have to put out any thought at any moment in time out there. It can provide some really good commentary and often does, right? But it can also be used to allow you into the thoughts of individuals that without Twitter you wouldn't have had access to, and perhaps those thoughts should have stayed in their head. I made this argument on the radio show that I host with Drew here on Twin Cities News Talk that we have the answer to the question of whether or not we as humans should ever be able to read somebody else's mind. If anybody makes a machine that can read minds, that machine needs to be destroyed and that person needs to be hidden and locked away so they can never create it. Why do I say that? Because all you have to do is go and look at Twitter. Because Twitter provides the opportunity for anonymous individuals to put up thoughts, any thought that they want to put up for everybody to read. And quite honestly, some of those thoughts should not be put out there for people to read. It really is like reading people's minds. And when it comes to the Star Wars fandom, it's been really toxic because of that. And that tweet's a good point. Look, he's entitled to his opinion, and I don't want to be too negative. I am going to talk a little negativity when it comes to the marketing and give my thoughts on what Disney can do better. But I saw that tweet, and I just had to laugh that you're not paying. If that's what you think, if you think that fans aren't excited for The Rise of Skywalker and that it's because Rian Johnson didn't set anything up in The Last Jedi, okay, you need to allow yourself the opportunity or afford yourself the opportunity to go listen to any one of the weekly podcasts that are out there, and you tell me what the focus of content is, and then afterwards you tell me how people are or are not excited for The Rise of Skywalker. All right, I've said my piece over that particular tweet. Let's move on.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
All right, let's get into some fun stuff before we dive into the deep stuff. Bespin Bulletin, excuse me. Bespin Bulletin put up an Instagram post earlier this week. And this was found initially on the Star Wars Leaks page on Reddit. So on Reddit this week, after these posts went up, several different LEGO leaks had come out. LEGO leak of the figure of the Knights of Ren. The Zori figure came out. We've got a new teal-colored astromech droid. We also have got a new First Order Jump Trooper variant that looks pretty awesome in LEGO form. Somebody on Twitter actually did the work to go and provide sort of a real version based off of the LEGO leak of what this particular stormtrooper could go and look like. Also on Reddit, it was put out via news. This was actually a news item, but the Star Wars Insider number 193 that's going to come out in October, so it'll probably be out sometime in September, is going to include an exclusive Rise of Skywalker preview. The picture they used on the front cover, because they are showing the Rise of Skywalker exclusive preview for Star Wars Insider, the picture they used for the cover is actually a picture of Princess Leia from The Last Jedi. It's the one of her wearing the outfit that she wore on Crate, and I'm going to use it this week for the image for the podcast post. So those are just a couple of items that came out on Reddit this week. But included in that was this Bespin Bulletin exclusive, various TIE fighters in the Rise of Skywalker. Before we get into the story, Bespin Bulletin did ask that if anybody decides to go ahead and give this report, to give Bespin Bulletin some credit. I guess there's been some frustration, and I can understand so, that people have taken some of Bespin Bulletin's exclusive posts and then cited them as their own or not credited the source. So if you go to Instagram, you can find them, Bespin Bulletin. You can also find them on Twitter as well. So this is what they write. Following the reveal last week that Poe Dameron is the owner of the orange X-Wing we will see in The Rise of Skywalker, and my speculation here is that Bespin Bulletin has seen these toy leaks, right? Some of the different toys that are going to be coming out here in the next couple of months, and certainly on Force Friday. I bring you an update on various TIE fighters in the final chapter of the Skywalker saga. Over the weekend, it was revealed via the Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary that a new TIE variant, the TIE Dagger, was in the film, but it's one of a handful of variants. We'll start off with the TIE fighter we see charging at Rey in the teaser. For some reason, people have speculated that it's not Kylo Ren, but in some cases, the most obvious answer is the right one. And it is regarding this. I've seen images of this new TIE with it definitely being called Kylo's TIE Fighter. That's not all I've seen. The Sith Troopers are also receiving their own TIE, unsurprisingly called Sith TIE Fighter. The Sith TIE is eerily similar to the TIE Dagger, with its pointed wings, but it has a red design with the center of the wings being black. There are then two other variants, the Special Forces TIE Fighter. No indication whether or not this looks like the current version of the Special Forces TIE Fighter. That look extremely similar. Well, I guess it does. My bad. Extremely similar to another TIE Fighter. And this is the TIE Whisper Fighter. That one has a larger, bulkier cockpit than like Kylo's TIE Fighter. So it looks like what we got here is you got Kylo's TIE Fighter, and I'm going to get double back to this in just a moment. And then you get the Special Forces TIE Fighter and the TIE Whisper Fighter that look similar to one another, but the Whisper has a larger, bulkier cockpit like Kylo Ren's does. Okay, so a lot of people have pointed out, rightly so, that the TIE Fighter at the opening of the teaser for The Rise of Skywalker, right, looks a lot like the TIE Silencer, but it's got the different sort of more standard TIE Fighter cockpit painted up to look kind of like the First Order TIEs, right, with the red accents. Okay, if you go into the visual dictionary for The Last Jedi, you will find out that the TIE Silencer in The Last Jedi was actually a prototype, which I dig. I really like that. I mean, let me take that back. I love Kylo Ren's TIE Silencer. Okay. I know what Rian Johnson was going for. He wanted something that echoed, and he said as much. He wanted something that echoed the advanced TIE Fighter that Darth Vader had in the original trilogy, certainly in A New Hope, right? He also wanted something that kind of showed Kylo Ren's background with his father and the Millennium Falcon. So it has the thrusters, if you will, in the rear that look similar to what the Falcons look like, the sort of rectangle shaped, even though they glow red. And then the cockpit is more akin to the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon than it necessarily is a TIE Fighter. Now, that being said, I like the new version better because it's more like a TIE Interceptor. I'm really excited to get my hands on the toy version of Kylo Ren's new TIE Fighter. And I'm super excited to see these other variants, and I'm hoping that this is going to be a bit of an indication that we'll be seeing some diversity when it comes to the Resistance/Rebel forces in The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm not necessarily looking for new ships. I've mentioned this before. I want some old ships brought back into the mix. I want to see, because I'm assuming we're going to get a massive space battle in The Rise of Skywalker, but I want to see some new First Order variants, like the ones I just mentioned, squaring off against a variety of ships that we've seen throughout the entire saga, going all the way back to the prequels. I want to see some Naboo N1 starfighters in there. I want to see some Jedi starfighters. I want to see some Jedi starfighters from Attack of the Clones and the ones from Revenge of the Sith, along with some old school X-Wings and Y-Wings and new A-Wings with old A-Wings. That, to me, would be absolutely fantastic and a visual mind explosion, if that's what we can go and get. And I've discussed this before about how this would be a really easy way, but a really fun way and nostalgic way for J.J. Abrams to tie all of these movies together. All right, let's move on to the next topic.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
All right, from Nerdist.com, Aaron Vale writes this. We're still a good 5 months away from the release of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, and we're hungrier for details than Rey heating up her portion of instant bread on Jakku. By the way, if you get a chance and you're on Twitter, go into Rian Johnson's feed, and there was this amazing thread that popped up on Saturday where somebody had commented on the bread. Okay, the bread, the portions. Rey puts the dust into the bowl in her at home, and it makes the bread. And Rian Johnson commented on this, and then Edgar Wright, the director, got in on the action, and Rian Johnson had some spicy comments to people that were giving him a hard time. It was spectacular. So go and check it out. And I think it also, by the way, answered some of the questions with regard to whether or not he's still working with Star Wars, because he was talking a lot about Star Wars and even retweeted a Jabba the Hutt gif in the process. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of the opinion that if Rian Johnson is doing Star Wars references and he's not still working with Star Wars, that would be a little bit awkward. All right, back to the article. With the flood of imagery we saw at San Diego Comic-Con and the news about new comics, focused on Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren, we've been thinking about our favorite bad boy and his iconic mask. So far, in all the official promotion material we've seen for The Rise of Skywalker, Kylo has, as I've talked about on the show as well, Kylo has appeared sans mask. In the trailer, he's seen throwing down with a Knight of Ren in the forest. I know that's still up for debate, but I'm still under the impression that is a Knight of Ren. On the cover of Vanity Fair and in the spread within, he's also fresh-faced and maskless. Also, in an image shown at Star Wars Celebration, Kylo is seen with all of Adam Driver's face glory. If you recall, at the beginning of The Last Jedi, after being absolutely roasted by Supreme Leader Snoke's incredible burn, "You're just a child in a mask," Kylo smashes his Vader-inspired mask to smoking pieces. He spends the rest of the film without it, letting his part of the past die. While the trailer for 9 seems to show some mysterious hands at work repairing the mask, we haven't actually seen Kylo in it, apart from some other marketing materials at advertising expos and on toy boxes. This is where the theory comes in. What if, and stay with us here, Kylo doesn't actually put on his mask back on in The Rise of Skywalker? What if someone else is sporting his First Order look to lead the Knights of Ren on whatever nefarious plan they are executing through the course of the film? I'm going to point to that comment from J.J. Abrams again, going back to the pre-release to The Force Awakens, and how J.J. said we were going to see and know the origins of the mask in The Force Awakens, and we never got it. Okay. A brief concession. This theory would then posit that Kylo would indeed be helping the Resistance in one way or the other. So this is a pro-Ben Demption theory. Further, Kylo putting his own mask back on in The Rise of Skywalker would seemingly revert the character development he went through in The Last Jedi. So, a mix of hope and previous movie logic have led me to believe that it is, in fact, someone else under the mask. Who could this imposter be? On Reddit, an individual who went by Masters25 added fuel to the fire, positing former Doctor Who alum Matt Smith is the one donning the helmet. And we've talked about this before on the show as well. I was thinking about this earlier today. I cannot think of a reason convincing enough for Kylo to put the helmet back on, given the events of The Last Jedi. Is it possible that we see one of the Knights of Ren, say Matt Smith's character, actually put the mask on and parade as Supreme Commander, probably after they have a falling out? Interesting. This also lines up with how coy Matt Smith has been about his role in 9. While Smith was apparently cast last year, as announced by Variety this past March, he denied the involvement to the LA Times, saying, "As far as I can tell, I'm definitely not." Is Smith telling the truth, or is he appearing in The Rise of Skywalker under Kylo Ren's mask? Could we see the Knights of Ren continue their campaign of terror in the galaxy if Kylo joins up with the Resistance? Again, this is all just wild theory, but it's definitely worth considering. We'll just have to wait until December to find out. All right. I don't have much else to add to the theory in and of itself, except this. We are hungry for mythology and details. We want twists and we want depth in our story. And I'm going to, again, tie this into the conversation that we'll have before and the commentary that I'll give before we get into listener feedback, because it goes back to the marketing of these films. I'm going to move over to this other article because it plays into this particular theory quite nicely. Okay. I'll add to, and this is something I put it on last week's show, there is a lot of weirdness going on. There was the shot that has been established, it is in the movie, the fight between Kylo Ren and Rey, or a fight involving Kylo Ren and Rey, on what appears to be the wreckage of the Death Star 2 among the water, and that pendant/pin that was released by Loungefly that showed the artwork that had Rey squaring off against somebody wearing the Kylo Ren mask with water behind it. Many people have speculated that there was a person in between the two of them that has been removed from that particular photo where that fight was taking place, which would explain why the two of them are so far apart. I think there is something to be said that perhaps an individual may be wearing the mask. The mask maybe has a level of importance. Maybe that's tied into Palpatine. We'll have to wait to see, and certainly, hopefully, the Episode 9 full trailer will provide us with a little bit more perspective on that. Okay, so let's get to this other article written by Aaliyah Smith. And this goes back to post The Last Jedi and its release. The most important line no one is talking about it, what it means for 9. And again, this was shortly after Episode 8, The Last Jedi ended up coming out. Note to hardcore fans, I am a fan. I have read some extended universe, but I'm going to rely on movie canon only. Please keep this in mind. This isn't a review of The Last Jedi, though this movie resurrected the true Star Wars fan in me. For all its faults, because it has a few, the writer says, it's the most audacious Star Wars yet. My new hope, see what I did there, is that it will live up to the subtext it's establishing. So what's this line I baited you with? Bear with me just a touch longer while I set the context. The original trilogy traded on the fight between good, the light side, and evil, dark side. It was cool. It was hip. It was 1977. Okay, even going into 1983. Now, 2017, we see so many people trying to do the right thing, yet come to cross purposes. Good versus evil is not as simple as it once was. Regular decent folks are bringing the hammer down hard on each other for not following the other's definition of good. This theme was echoed in Holdo versus Poe dynamic among the rebels. Both wanted the same outcome, a win for the rebels, yet could not agree on what that looked like, and so a clash was inevitable. This disunity was equally apparent among the bad guys. Boy, I loved when Hux almost got his blaster out before Kylo Ren woke up. Even Kylo killing Snoke in this second movie of a new trilogy, we assume, shows the new ground we're treading. So, if there's no unity among the good guys, and no unity among the bad guys, what do we have left? Glad you stuck around this long. We have balance. Rey is carefully set up as Luke's heir, okay? Maybe not by blood, but, right, certainly by theme. Kylo as Darth Vader's, yet, multiple times in the movie, they're shown to be directly equal to each other. Luke does it, so does Snoke, and Rey and Kylo demonstrate it in action. Let me stop here real quick and add in something, going back to the mask and the theory of somebody else donning the mask and Palpatine's return and Matt Smith in The Rise of Skywalker. And this actually spins back to the Bespin Bulletin TIE silencer beginning of the teaser trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. So, right, confirmation that is Kylo Ren in that new TIE interceptor silencer at the beginning of that Rise of Skywalker teaser trailer. Okay. MakingStarWars.net had put out an article earlier this year talking about how Rey and Kylo would fight after that scene. And I've heard some people also speculate that the ability to block blasts via a lightsaber may be the reason why Kylo Ren didn't open fire on Rey on whatever planet that was. We assume it's Pisana at the start of the trailer. And that scene takes place earlier in the movie. We also know, and we've seen footage, and I actually saw a GIF of this on Twitter the other day, of Kylo Ren on a desert-looking planet without his helmet on. And Jason Ward with MakingStarWars.net has also said that he's seen images of that TIE fighter crashed. And that may be where the Force flash fights that we've discussed occur. If that's the case, we also know that there are rumors out there that Force flash fight that I talked about extensively last week that may be very similar to, if not exactly the same, to the Force back scene that we saw in The Force Awakens, ends with sort of a mutual understanding of what it is that they are both battling against, and that might be the moment in the film where the two of them realize that they need to come together as one to battle this new evil emerging, and this plays into the comments that I'm going to give at the end of this particular article. So my point is that in The Rise of Skywalker, what we saw in the trailer and Rey, flipping over the ship that Kylo Ren is piloting, she might end up basically taking out the TIE fighter, bringing him for the two to the ground, for the two of them to fight, at which point in time, some point in the beginning or the middle of the film, we see Kylo Ren and Rey end up coming together to go off and battle this foe of Knights of Ren and Palpatine's return, and that what we saw in the trailer was actually the very start of all of that happening. Okay, so I've established all of that. Again, this is getting back to sort of Rey and Kylo teaming up again, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. All right, back to the article. On Octo, Luke asks Rey what she knows about the Force, and her weak answer has him reply, "Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong." Then, when Luke and Kylo face off on Crate, Kylo rants about the end of the rebellion, to which Luke smoothly counters, "Amazing. Every word that you just said is wrong." Now, maybe the writers got lazy, or Mark Hamill can only remember 1 out of 2 lines, but I somehow don't think so. What was the line? No, that's not the line that's the most important in the movie. So what is it? Okay, the line that made me perk up, she writes, and quietly cheer was uttered by Supreme Leader Snoke when he has Rey and Kylo Ren in his Red Room of Doom. That's my name for it. I'm sure that's not the actual cooler name, says the article writer. Snoke's lead-in line should be familiar from the promo. Darkness rises in the light to meet it. The next is key. And for the life of me, I can't find anyone talking about its potential significance for the forthcoming Episode 9. Ready for it? Certainly people have since then, but for the sake of the article back in 2017, nobody was talking about it yet. Snoke says this: "I warned my young apprentice that as he grew stronger, his equal in the light would rise." Snoke goes on to say how he thought this equal would be Skywalker. Not sure how smart Snoke can be, since Skywalker was already strong in the light side way before Kylo, and Snoke's been obviously dealing in the dark for a while himself. Wouldn't they already cosmically cancel each other out? But, and this is where it gets exciting, the new trilogy writers are finally playing with why the hell this battle between light and dark has been going on so long. It's because the Force requires it. Let that sink in. The Force will not allow dark without light. It will not allow light without dark in equal measure. If there will always be evil where there's good, and always good where there's evil, now we're starting to get into a Force who plays Game of Thrones. This is the vanity of the Jedi that Luke warns Rey about on Ahch-To. The Jedi do not own the light side of the Force. They don't own hope. To say hope or the light side would no longer exist without the Jedi is like saying violence would no longer exist without the Sith. Luke's lesson to Rey explicitly draws out that the Force is the balance between the light and dark. Now, you might be thinking that this is just a setup for the final battle where Rey and Kylo face off in Episode 9. And you're probably right. I could see that battle happening. But consider this. When they fight together, they're unstoppable. This was clear fighting the Praetorian Guards, both in perfect sync with the other. Then when Rey rejects Kylo's offer to join him, co-supreme leadering the universe, she force grabs the lightsaber, he counters, and balance. Neither one wins. They are perfectly matched. Presumably, it's only because Rey is knocked unconscious when Holdo cracks the Supreme Leader's ship like an egg that Rey gets away. Wait, did she leave Kylo Ren alive? By the way, nobody ever talks about that. And I'm sure people have. I've never mentioned it on the show. But let's stop for just a moment and play with that thought for a second. Rey doesn't kill Kylo. And she could have. Now, she couldn't have done it with the lightsaber. Obviously, it's been broken. She took it with her. But she could have done it any number of different ways. She could have dragged Kylo Ren into that thing that chop sueyed the Praetorian Guard into shreds during the fight. She could have grabbed one of the Praetorian... She could have grabbed Kylo Ren's lightsaber, for crying out loud. It was there too. Come on, man. Right? Now, again, storyline-wise, that would have been kind of epic, you know, how it should have ended. The next shot is Hux standing over Kylo Ren's decapitated body because Rey took him out before she left. But no, she did not. She left him there to live. By the way, the Rebellion doesn't have any problem with this. Poe doesn't have any problem with this. Does she tell everybody that she left him there when she had the opportunity to... Okay, I'm just saying. All right. I know that wouldn't be good storytelling. The Force isn't itself light or dark. It's the tension between light and dark. Perhaps finally 9 shows the gray balance of the Force. Now, back to the basics, Grey Jedi. This is where the article goes. If you're still following me, keep your eye on Rey's costumes throughout Episode 7 and 8, and how easily she went to from a dark place on Ahch-To. Like, Luke was aghast. Luke said, you went straight to the dark. Rey said, that place was trying to show me something. Luke, it offered you something you needed. You didn't even try to stop it yourself. Yet Rey went with no fear, and experienced no fear in her vision. The opposite of Luke's experience on Dagobah in The Empire Strikes Back. Rey also continues to insist that Kylo Ren has light in him. Kylo Ren even takes off, and Tantrum destroys, his mask as he attempts to find his identity, rather than becoming a more dark-like Vader. Now, I'm not shipping these two, Reylo, K-Rey, as they say. It's not about a romantic relationship, according to the article writer. It's about the characters gravitating toward balance by finding a way that's not full light or full dark, something they may not have been able to do on their own without each other. This is why Luke may be the last of the old Jedi. Perhaps it's time for something old is new again. You see, the Jedi got off mission when they went full council. They didn't care about the balance anymore. They began policing, politicking, setting random rules like don't love people and you can't learn to be a Jedi if you start older than 4. They abandoned balance, tried to retain purpose and power. My hope is that the next movie continues to explore the gray, not to eliminate good versus evil, but to enhance it, to show that being good or evil isn't about your bloodline or your destiny or held in one action. It's your choices day over day. Our new cast is young. They're fighting for their beliefs and making mistakes. Some have made larger mistakes than others. We're looking at you, Kylo, but not sure if he can come back from that the way we all forgave Vader. But now, in balance, there are tantalizing possibilities. Okay, so here's a couple of what-ifs, all right? First off, what if Rey's light rises, Kylo's dark diminishes, right? Balance is getting thrown off, ushering in Palpatine. Just throwing that out there. The stronger theory, the more compelling theory, is how balance can go and be achieved. And this is where the fun begins, for me at least, okay? And this goes back to this idea of Reylo, and Reylo meaning a couple of different things, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. It's more about these two characters and what they mean to each other. What I really like is this idea of how do we resolve this conflict for good? Now, there's sort of the obvious answer. The obvious answer is that we end up finding out that Palpatine's been pulling the strings all along. And because of that, we're back to defeating the ultimate evil in the same way that we did in Return of the Jedi by thinking that we got rid of Palpatine for good, but the reality was we didn't. And he was the ultimate bad, and we have to get rid of him if there is going to be peace in the galaxy. I'm okay with that. It's kind of the obvious answer there. Doesn't have to go any deeper for a general audience, and so you can kind of tie everything up with a nice little bow, and you can do Bendemption there as well. What I think the more compelling answer is, and Palpatine is included in this, whatever part of this whole scenario he plays into it, right? But what I think is more compelling is that by Ben's redemption and Rey's acceptance and forgiveness of what he's done, Rey and Kylo Ren end up forming that yin and yang. They are the balance. Because Rey ends up accepting and forgiving Kylo Ren for his heinous things and allowing Ben Solo to rise, right, to be redeemed. Now you have that light and that dark balance. You have the brother and sister aspect from the Mortis arc, but perhaps it's not necessarily brother and sister, but it's more a couple forged in balance. I don't think they're going to play with the Mortis arc, and I'm not going to spend time getting into it right now if you haven't watched it, but you need to go watch that arc from the Clone Wars. I do think they can pull from that, and there's a lot to be said about that Mortis arc when you've got the father and then you've got the brother and the sister. They all existed together, even though the sister was representing full light and the brother was representing darkness. They weren't separated from one another. They were together. And I love this idea that at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, this is what we end up getting. is Kylo Ren is redeemed, or Ben Solo is redeemed, and Kylo Ren has died. But he has and is connected to the dark side, and these two represent the light and the dark together, finding balance within one another and both coexisting. Now, that could take the place of the two of them going off together, right? And this idea that they're going to provide balance to the galaxy by Reylo in full fruition, and the two of them together actually being connected as a couple. Whether or not J.J. Abrams is brave enough to do that, I do not know, but I am certainly excited to see what he has to offer, and I think that would be an amazing finale to the series, if that indeed ends up being the case. But what do you think? Speaking of what Nerdist does all the time, drop a comment on YouTube. Of course, you can email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Looking forward to seeing what you have to say about all of this coming up on next week's show. And with that being said, let's go ahead and, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was going to dive right into listener feedback. Before I do, though, let me go ahead and address this one other issue, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get into the listener feedback portion of the show.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
So I heard on multiple podcasts this week the same complaint. And that complaint was that Disney is doing a poor job of marketing Star Wars and not giving us as fans enough. I tend to agree with that. One of the complaints I heard, and this was on the Forcecast, I think, and also Resistance Radio had it too. They were both complaining about this. But there was a lot of frustration coming out of San Diego Comic-Con. And I know that we're going to be getting a lot of information at D23 coming up here in about a month, okay? And the expectation is we'll get the behind-the-scenes trailer. I know some people are saying we'll get the trailer at D23. I don't think that's going to happen. But I've argued all along that while I love the Star Wars show, it is such a wasted opportunity for not bringing in individuals involved in the production of the new films to talk about things that will not spoil the movie, but will provide the fans with just enough to go off of and have fun with. And what they were complaining about is the fact that the MCU has really achieved status beyond Star Wars right now as the most popular pop culture franchise. And the fact that the MCU is able to go after the success of Endgame, follow that up with a Hall H panel where they lay out the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and bring these actors out without giving away any of the details of the plot lines of these films, but they're providing just enough to keep people excited. And the guys on the Forcecast made a really good point. You don't even have to add anything else to the slate of Star Wars movies to go and do this. You can take what we already know is coming and just provide us with a little bit of details. Now, maybe Disney and Lucasfilm were worried because they've had so many changes in directors and you know what they were going to do with their anthology films and the Star Wars stories, and I get that, but if they've got things that are set in stone, even if it's years down the line, I really do hope that they take a Marvel Cinematic Universe approach and stop being so secretive with the fans. You don't need to be. Even if, look, just let us know what it is. You know, get us off the speculation of what's going to happen with Rian Johnson, and we know that, you know, through other sources that the Game of Thrones guys are supposed to be doing the first movie. And we found out through not a technicality, but for sort of a side issue of the Star Wars movies and their slate of films that are going to be released and that we're going to have to wait multiple years. But give us more than that. And I'm with those individuals. You know, change the game up. I know that Star Wars thrives off of mystery, and I understand Disney's desire to hold back and not oversaturate the market with Star Wars stuff. I get that. I think they overreacted to what happened with Solo. I think we need to start getting into the Rise of Skywalker. That hype can start now, and they're holding off, and I get it, and I know that within a couple months we're all going to be inundated with wall-to-wall Rise of Skywalker stuff, but I wish they would start now, and I echo the sentiments of other podcasters who say that, you know, we should take a cue from what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing and be a little bit more open and honest with what we're doing with Star Wars and the saga films down the road. We would all benefit from that. And I think the podcasting community would benefit from it. The fandom would benefit from it, because I don't see a whole lot of good that comes out of the speculation about what can and can't happen. It's a lot of wasted conversation that could be focused on real tangible things that we could discuss. Just tell us what time period the Game of Thrones movies are going to be written in. Just give us a little bit of a nugget. Tell us if it's going to be, pre the Phantom Menace by how many years, and then let us go and speculate. Just give us a little bit. But the fact that there's so many podcasts that are talking about this right now tells me that, or at least I hope is an indication that maybe Disney is listening to them, and perhaps they'll go and change their marketing techniques. I need to get Zach on the show. I keep saying I'm going to, from Knights of Vader. He's got a marketing background. I'd be really curious to get his thoughts on that. And I mentioned it last week, but if you didn't get a chance to listen to his box office prediction episode for The Rise of Skywalker on Knights of Vader, be sure you go and check that out. It really is a fantastic listen. Really did go and enjoy it. All right, now we can go ahead and do this.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, as we dive into listener feedback, and I'll talk a little bit about this right at the end of the show, but I am into the publishing phase of my second book of my EMBARK, a space opera science fiction series. I will be completely open and honest with you guys as podcast listeners. It will be available on Amazon very, very soon. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually going to put it up on Amazon and make it available for purchase before I end up making the big grand announcement. So what I'm saying to you is you get a bit of a preview. If you are a fan of the first book and you're looking forward to the second book, and I'm so excited to get this story out there. I just got done with my last read after the proofread, and I know I wrote it. I get that. I am cannot be trusted in my opinion because I am the author of this, but I really do love this story. I learned a lot from writing the first book, and this second story, Treasure in Darkness, is a lot of fun. So what am I saying with all this? I'm saying that maybe by the time you listen to this and you go to Amazon.com, it might already be available. That's what I'm saying. In the meantime, if it's not there and you haven't purchased the first book yet, it is marked down, and it will be marked down for the time being with the release of the second book. 99 cents for the ebook. Paperback is marked down. Audiobook is available at a cheaper price if you end up picking up the ebook. And I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end of the show, but I just wanted to give you a preview and let you know that by the time you listen to this, not everybody might know this, but you will because you're listening to the podcast, that the second book in my series might actually be available on Amazon.com. Certainly will be by the end of the week. I'll just say that. It'll be out before August 1st, but that's just between you and me. All right, let's get to a listener feedback this week. And first, we'll talk with Mira. Mira writes this. Listening to your Star Wars-related podcast on YouTube for a while now, I'm loving it. You posed the question on a previous show. If it's not Reylo, then what is it? And I'm glad that you did. While I don't think that Reylo is the only story in the sequel trilogy, certainly isn't, it certainly is the biggest one. Yes, it is. I haven't heard you speak about the reincarnation theory on your channel. I'm going to try and keep it simple and give you a few links to a place that will explain it in greater detail. One thing that is important to note is in the past trilogies is the arc of Vader was never finished. Anakin only went through two-thirds of the hero's journey. He was not physically there to complete it, but the Force can assist him. George Lucas was really specific about what he wanted to do for the next trilogy after the prequel trilogy, saying, how do we get Darth Vader back to being the innocent little boy he once was? How? Well, if you ask me, you bring him back from the dead. George Lucas had put a lot on all three movies. However small it may be, we don't know. George Lucas had a lot of input in all three movies. However small it may be, we don't know. The visual parallels between Rey and Kylo/Ben to Padme and Anakin are very much in your face, most likely trying to push the idea that, at least in some way, these characters are quite similar. The first lines in TFA are, "This will begin to make things right," which is very similar to the last line spoken by Anakin to Padme, "Have faith, my love, things will soon be set right." I'm going to leave you with a link that sends you straight to that one reincarnation theory tag on this Tumblr blog. This is probably the most amount of information you can get about it in one place. It's 8 pages long and super detailed, from uncanny visual similarities and coincidences to the analysis of canon and other works. That one reincarnation theory. So you can go find that on Tumblr for yourself. I would encourage you to do so. It is very, very interesting. I probably didn't do all that well explaining it, but hey, maybe this will spark something from a fellow Minnesotan. No, I really did enjoy it. I like the theory. I find it really interesting and incredibly plausible as well. And this idea of the rise of Skywalker has always been really compelling to me because people are looking at the very surface level, Rey and Kylo Ren, and I think there is something to be said when it comes to Anakin Skywalker. Right? And I've mentioned this in previous episodes, and I thank you so much for the comment. I really do, in the email. I really do appreciate it. IJ writes this in response to last week's show. When was this recorded? I'm still reeling from all the info we got blasted with. You're too fast. Yeah, what they're referring to is I had put out a bunch of, on the Blaster app, I'd put out a bunch of commentary that I shared with on last week's show, and it was very quick after all the stuff had happened, and so I basically, a lot of stuff broke, a lot of news broke, and I immediately went and recorded the podcast, and so everything kind of ran together. So thank you, IJ. I appreciate the comment. But yeah, that's why I like the Blaster app, is that you can immediately go and put your thoughts online. You don't have to wait for the podcast. Blaster app in your app store, theblasterapp.com. Go and get it. And I want to hear what your thoughts are and your voices. Across the Stars says this: I was hoping so much for an official teaser poster, but we did get some great stuff at San Diego Comic-Con. I hope they make the Rise of Skywalker promo poster with just the Knights of Ren. I will frame that bad boy. Thank you, Across the Stars. Princess Cupcakes, you're so amazing, John. Oh, thank you, Princess Cupcakes. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for reading my goofy comments. You're the best. No, you're the best. And it's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. Mr. Z says this: these gap filler comics are despicable. They just put these out to compensate for the lack of detail and investment in Episode 9. Okay. How do you know that without seeing the movie? And why are gap filler comics despicable? I talked about this last week because we didn't get that a lot with The Last Jedi because it took place right after The Force Awakens, but now we are. And this has happened before before The Last Jedi. This happened with The Force Awakens as well. I don't see it despicable at all. And putting out to compensate for the lack of detail and investment in 9, okay. You keep on keeping on, Mr. Z. I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, Miranda writes this: I would like to think that Disney and Lucasfilm, the way they are going about marketing and promoting the Rise of Skywalker, is like feeding us teeny bits of breadcrumbs, giving us a lot by showing us very little with a variety of interesting images and only one trailer so far. It amazes me that even with little pieces of promos and footage we've gotten already, it still amazes me right now that we still don't know what the whole movie will bring from beginning to end. I think I'm having more fun with the anticipation and engaging in YouTube channels such as this and the few others that still make Star Wars fun and not a food fight out of the Wild West. So therefore, can we skip the rest of July and go straight to August 23rd? Please, we're all hungry. You know, and again, I keep saying this, but I'm gonna mention it as well. I really do think that the Star Wars show and Star Wars fandom in general could benefit so much by just giving us a little bit more. Look, like the TIE Dagger. It's on the cover of the Visual Dictionary. Talk about that. There's no reason that we need outlets like Bespin Bulletin to provide us with this leaked information on toy stuff, right, that they couldn't share right now on the Star Wars show for the hardcore fans. Right? I get it. I know they've got a marketing team behind it, but man, I just wish that they would just every week just feed us a little bit something else from the movie that doesn't spoil anything. All right. Liz writes this: I'm so excited for the Rise of Skywalker. Your podcasts are awesome. Your comment's awesome, Liz. Thank you very much. Amanda B. As it's getting closer and closer to 9, I get both excited and nervous. I'm looking forward to reading the Rise of Kylo Ren comic because I love this character. I want to know more about him, the Knights of Ren, etc., leading up to the Rise of Skywalker. I want to think it bodes well for Ben Demption. We've been given Ben as a child, Last Shot, the reason catalyst for falling to the dark side, The Last Jedi, and now we're even getting more about how he became Kylo Ren. Yep, totally agree. Let's see. Let's go here to Kimmy Skywalker. I'm so excited for The Rise of Kylo Ren. The author who is writing the comment is the same author who wrote the second Darth Vader series comics, which I found amazing. If you have not read that series yet, I highly recommend it. So many good things happening in Star Wars right now. Not sure there can be so many sour fans. Great podcast as usual. Thanks for your insight. Thank you, Kimmy. I appreciate it. Norwal Music just writes this. This video is straight fire. Wow. Thank you, Norwal Music. I appreciate you guys are so nice. All right. JW, if you're wanting to watch Solo and Rogue One back-to-back, I'd throw Rebels in between the two because Rebel takes place before Rogue One. Absolutely. I, for one, like Solo in general, but hated that stupid, horrible droid L3. And because of her, I will never watch the movie again. All right. I liked it. I know people have complaints about L3, but I appreciated L3. And the good news is, JW, spoiler alert, she dies. So we won't be seeing her again unless it's some other solo story, right? Okay. Misconduct 1, friend of the show, writes this. John, everyone just needs to chill out about what's going to happen in The Rise of Skywalker. LOL. I try very hard to not get upset when stories don't go the way I think. As an adult, sometimes it's really hard. We have big expectations. I learned my lesson the hard way after the prequels. I do have a love for the prequels now because of going back and watching it with my children. Watching the movies through their eyes gave me a new appreciation for the story. It taught me to go into that theater and watch these movies through the eyes of my 12-year-old self. When adults walk into a film, they have big expectations. When children walk into these films, their only expectation is to go on a fun adventure with their favorite heroes. Kids have things they want to happen as well as adults, but in my opinion, they handle it much better than we do. I'll give you an example. One of my old students went with me and my daughter to see The Last Jedi after I asked him, "What was your favorite part of the movie?" His reply was, "I loved the part when Luke died, but I thought it was a little sad when his coat flew away." Luke is his favorite character, and there was no anger about him drinking green milk from an alien boob, no upset about him almost killing Ben or stating that Luke would never do that. Just that scene when Luke dies was beautiful to him, and it made him sad to see him go. You see through the eyes of a child. It's the greatest way to watch. Okay? This is a great show, John. I'm hoping for all the fans to go into The Rise of Skywalker and watch the film through the eyes of their 12-year-old self and go on an adventure. I have big feelings about how I'd like to see this whole thing close at the end of the day. I'm going to choose one scene that I love the most, like the little guy did. One scene that made me tear up and feel the goosebumps again, feel happy and sad all at the same time. Just like that first big jump to light speed when you're riding the Star Tours at Disneyland. Have a great week, and may the Force be with you. Thank you, Misconduct. I always appreciate your thoughts. Skydraffic says this, I have one problem. It was said that somebody messed with the lighting in the shot of the Kylo Ren mask in the Rise of Skywalker trailer, and they said a Knight of Ren could be seen in the background. Yep. I tried manipulating an image. I saw nothing. Have you seen the supposed image? Yep. Is there a link? I don't have it in front of me, but what if we are theorizing based off something that wasn't true? No, I've seen that image, and there definitely is a Knight of Ren in the background. Let's see. What else do we have? They go on to say this. I don't think the Knights will reveal what happened at the temple. Not at all in the Knights of Ren comic. Or the Rise of Kylo Ren comic. Something huge went down there, something of a different point of view, which leads a lot of explaining and will lead up to the big twist in 9, something that shows Ben's redeeming qualities. I would think Slash would prefer the comic simply explaining who the Knights are, adventures they face together, and introduce some of the characters' dynamics. I'm also waiting for the novel by Claudia Gray. All right. Thank you, Skydraffic. Appreciate it. Disney Desi writes this. We do know that Palpatine will be in the movie because Ian McDiarmid mentioned at Celebration that he has scenes with Rey. Okay? He did not say anything about Kylo, though, which I thought was interesting. Nolan writes this. I can't imagine someone switching to the good side after being shut down by the girl you like. I believe Kylo will go deeper to the dark side because of it. I believe Palpatine will help guide Kylo like he guided Anakin. It is important to remember to keep our expectations low with seeing Palpatine. I agree. So maybe Kylo recalls Palpatine similar to seeing Yoda as a ghost, or maybe finds a small part of Palpatine to teach him the dark side. Love the show. Just started the podcast last week and haven't stopped listening to it. Thank you so much, Nolan. I appreciate that. Guitarded writes this. The more they show of villains, the less imagination we can have with them. Okay? Carlos says this. Hey, John, love the show every week. Thank you, Carlos. I've been asking myself and trying to find out online what is the deal with the island mentioned in the interrogation scene in TFA and the tree temple in The Last Jedi. Kylo, I see the island. Rey, I've been here before. Is this foreshadowing time travel? All right. Yeah, I do not know. Clearly, Kylo Ren was talking about the island, right? In that interrogation scene in The Force Awakens. Rey did clearly state, right, how familiar it looked. I know that Red Letter Media has a video out there talking about the world between worlds and time travel in The Rise of Skywalker. I will be completely honest with you. I have watched one Red Letter Media video, not even the whole thing, and haven't watched anything of their stuff since then. Not the kind of material that I want to listen to from those two particular fans, and certainly not the stuff that they're talking about with The Rise of Skywalker. I like to choose the positive stuff for me personally. I don't think we'll be seeing any time travel in the films. That's just me. I think that's difficult to thrust upon a general audience, right? Something that can be done in a cartoon, certainly. Something that maybe gets established later on, early on in a series, so people get used to it. But this idea that we end up doing some time travel, I just don't see that happening in The Rise of Skywalker. And certainly not, for what it's worth, spoiler alert, with the way that the Endgame played out with Avengers, I just don't see them going down that route as well. I think J.J. Abrams handles the nostalgic part of it and connecting all the movies together and doing that time travel-esque thing we talked about, the way that we'll see in the Force Flash fights where they're going to different locations throughout the trilogy. That's how it'll be handled, not through a direct time travel experience or world between worlds in The Rise of Skywalker, but I can always be wrong. All right, what else do we got? Anthea Gaia, friend of the show. Super excited to see what is in the comic series coming out, both Allegiance and The Rise of Kylo Ren. I have not followed the comics before, but I think I will have to make an exception for this one. We need some more background on how Kylo Ren came about, and I'm excited to see that. I think that will help people that are not sold on his redemption see what he actually went through from being Ben Solo to becoming Kylo Ren. Also look forward to seeing what the Resistance went through between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Let's see. Skydrathic is back. Question: isn't it a fact that the Jedi actively sought for the Sith to eliminate them, to kill/imprison all Sith Lords before the Republic? Ergo, it's only karma. The Empire wanted to eliminate the Jedi. I do not know the answer to that question. Sorry, Skydrathic. I'm not aware. All right, we'll wrap up with this. Agnes, friend of the show, has an off-topic but a really good way to wrap up the show this week, and I'm excited about this. Hello, John, and a friend of the show has been listening for a while. We just finished watching Solo, our fourth time as a family. We all enjoy this movie so much. Today's verdict, me. This is better than A New Hope, way more fun. My husband. That woman, Kira, has more mojo and class in her little finger than a legion of Princess Leia's. Han is a loser. My son, 8 years old. This is like Rebels Season 1. Will Han meet Ezra? My daughter, almost 6. Dark Maul. Is Kira his fiancée? All of us. If Bob Iger does not allow Solo 2 to happen, he should be kicked out of Disney. I think the saga movies have become darker and more serious. Solo reflects the spirit of A New Hope, a light, fun movie, perfectly executed. We want more, absolutely. I hope they make it before the actors grow old, especially that freckled young rebel. That would be, she would be Emphas Ness, of course, is who they're referring to. Cheers, thanks for your show, as always, Agnes. I love Solo, too, and watched it again, was last weekend? And I remember Melinda came down and sat down and watched it with me. And I made this argument when Solo came out, that it really was the one movie that kind of had the closest ties to, feeling-wise, to A New Hope. And it is fun. It is like an episode of Rebels. Just a tight story, a fun adventure in the Star Wars universe that you can just wipe out on, right? I really, really do love that movie a lot. And I would love to see more Solo films as well, and I really hope they do. I hope that Bob Iger, at a bare minimum, goes against what he said about putting movies on the Disney Plus service and decides to do another Solo film with these cast of characters. But if you're not going to theatrically release it, then put it on Disney Plus, man. How great would it be to get something like that next year? I know we won't, but man, that would just be absolutely fantastic to see. And I echo your sentiments about the movie as well. It really is just a heck of a lot of fun, and it's they're all great. They're all great, and it's a toss up between Rogue One and Solo, which one that I end up liking more. All right, so that wraps the show up for this week. Again, if you want to support this podcast, I know that I mention it every single week, but we got new listeners every single week. I wrote my first science fiction space opera novel last year. It was released in November of last year. It's called EMBARK. In the not-so-distant future, car culture is replaced by air and space flight made possible by two of Earth's largest corporations. Flight Mechanic, our protagonist, Tafgardia. He spends his free time racing through the skies with his three best friends and the girl he longs to be with, headstrong Keith Amaro. With the planet on the brink of an industrial apocalypse, a powerful and ruthless corporate madman, Sin Argum, moves to exploit the disaster with his covertly created military. When Taft, Keitha, and their friends uncover a shocking secret, Sin Argum will stop at nothing to find them. Time on Earth is running out, but with the help of a ragtag group of young pilots, they'll fight for humanity's survival and future among the stars. The second book in the series, EMBARK, Treasure in Darkness, is going into the publishing phase and may even be available right now at the time when you listen to this podcast. I will, of course, make it official once I get everything out there, but I'm going to approach the releasing of this book a little differently, and I'm going to put it up to publish and make sure everything is all set on Amazon, and then let the world know that the second book in the series is out. You get the preview, though. So, go to Amazon.com. Look for EMBARK, Jon, Jon Justice. And if you haven't picked up the first book, and again, if you want to support the podcast, this is the best way to do so. Right now, and for the foreseeable future, I'm going to leave the first book. It's hefty. It's 120,000 words. But it really sets the stage, and you absolutely have to read the first book before you get into the second book. It is marked right now 99 cents for the ebook, $11.99 for the paperback, which you can get the ebook for free. And a purchase of the ebook or the paperback gets you the audiobook on Audible for only $7.50, and you can read it for free on Kindle Unlimited if you are on Kindle Unlimited. And again, if you just liked the first book, you will love the second book. It is my Empire Strikes Back to EMBARK and A New Hope. I'm so excited to get the story out there. Like I said, I just got done reading through the final read, and basically what I'm waiting for right now is for the ebook conversion to come back, and as soon as I get it, I'm putting it up on Amazon. The paperback is already up there. I just haven't hit publish yet on it because I'm waiting for the final cover to get back. So I'm just waiting for a couple of different things, and then it'll be available for purchase online. Once it is, I will make it official on the podcast and put out my official announcements on Blaster and on my Twitter feeds and on Facebook. But it would behoove you, if you're interested in picking it up, to go to Amazon, and perhaps it might already be there. Certainly go pick up the first book. It would really, really mean a lot to me and a fantastic way to go and support this show. All right, that's it for this week. We will be back again next week. Thank you so much for spending time. I look forward to your commentary as I do every single week. You can email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or leave me a comment up on YouTube. Talk to you again next week, and go to Amazon.com, Jon, Jon Justice, and pick up your copy of EMBARK, and just maybe EMBARK, Treasure in Darkness, Book 2.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.